Hey everyone, welcome to the Cybercram YouTube channel. In this video I'm going to discuss ransomware defense. As for my background, I'm currently the Chief Information Security Officer at a well-known university. I hold a BS in Computer Science and have an MBA. As for certifications, I hold a CISSP and then the GCED and GIAC certifications. So the first use case I want to talk about is that of the Wannacry ransomware that hit in 2017. I think this will give you some idea as to why I'm looking at the layers of defense that I'm looking at. But Wannacry hit in 2017. It leveraged an SMB, that server message block vulnerability, to propagate. It was a crypto worm, so it was an interesting piece of ransomware. So not only was it ransomware, but it propagated like a worm, and it used SMB to do that. It used the MS17010 vulnerability to propagate. And some of you may know that's called referred to oftentimes as one of the eternal blue vulnerabilities that supposedly a group of hackers got from the NSA. So an update for this vulnerability was released on March 14th, 2017, and about 2 months later, attacks began. So note that timeline, that updates were released in March, attacks began in May, meaning that you could have patched in that 2-month window before the attacks began. So keep that in mind. So the approach to security I like to follow is that of defense in depth, and that's really a layered approach to security, if you will. And the layers I look at are at the endpoint and on the network level. And then finally, as the last piece of defense in depth, I'm going to speak about backups. Securing the endpoint. So there's multiple layers, multiple items you can address here. First, I highly recommend that, not just for the enterprise and organization, but also at home, that you run an operating system that's currently supported. Operating systems, as they evolve and newer ones are released, have better and better security controls in place. And so as these better security controls in place, they can provide more and better defense for you. So for instance, a Windows 7 computer these days is going to have a lot more vulnerabilities than a Windows 10 computer, partly because Windows 7 is no longer supported by Microsoft, and Microsoft no longer supports or no longer releases security updates for Windows 7. So as a result, definitely make sure that you're running operating systems that are current and supported. The next piece is make sure you're installing operating systems frequently and keeping your OS current on these updates. Security updates fix holes in your security oftentimes, and so these will help keep you from being low-hanging fruit. The third piece I want to make sure I discuss is that of application updates. Just like with your operating system, it's important that you keep your applications up to date. So if you're running, say for instance, the Microsoft Office Suite, Mozilla Firefox, or Google Chrome, it's important that you keep these updated. I recommend keeping these updated on a monthly basis. And then finally, it's important for you to run an anti-malware client. So this could be like a Sophos antivirus. This could be like a Microsoft Security Essentials. Trend Micro's got one. There's scores of anti-malware clients out there. Make sure you're running one of these. Make sure you're keeping it current with definitions. And this could potentially catch ransomware if it makes it to your computer. It's important to note that with anti-malware clients that these are definitely not bulletproof. They're not perfect. So it's certainly possible that malware can get past these. So as a result, it's important to keep the other layers of security in place on your computer. The next piece I want to talk about is that of network security. So if you have an enterprise network, there's 5 pieces here I want to discuss. The first one being that of a perimeter firewall with default deny rules. And what that means is the traffic that's coming into your network by default is blocked unless you specifically allow it. And if you look back at the Wannacry ransomware that leveraged SMB, if SMB was blocked at the perimeter inbound, propagation wouldn't have happened from the internet to your network. So that would have dropped traffic and provided a layer of security there. Number 2, if you look at intra-subnet firewalls and with default deny rules, again, between subnets, if you're blocking traffic that's not explicitly needed, you could potentially block SMB traffic. The third item I want to talk about is that of intrusion protection systems. IPSs scan traffic at the application layer and use signatures to look for malicious traffic. So let's say you have a Palo Alto IPS or a Fortinet IPS. These vendors will release signatures for given attacks. So they did release signatures for Wannacry. So your IPS could theoretically say, hey, I'm scanning this traffic against the signature. It looks like Wannacry. I'm going to block it. and then it'll alert you. So as you can see, if you have infected systems on your computer, on your network, the IPS could potentially block the traffic and prevent it from propagating. The fourth piece I want to talk about is that of an intrusion detection system. An IDS sits passively in line with traffic on your network, in line or mirrored, and can detect traffic based on signatures similar to the IPS. While it doesn't block it, it can certainly provide alerts to the admins and say, hey, we're detecting Wannacry traffic here. Go and take a look. The fifth piece I want to talk about, especially on an enterprise, is the importance of a SIEM, a Security Information Event Management System. A SIEM aggregates data and logs from various systems, and this can correlate alerts from various systems and basically alert and say, hey, I saw, say an anti-malware alert here, or an IDS alert here, an IPS alert, and basically bubble that up to your email and say, hey, here's a high severity event you really need to look at. Here's a diagram showing the in this case 8 layers of security here that I'm supporting or proposing for ransomware defense. Starting at the bottom, you see the importance of running a supported operating system, the importance of keeping your operating system updated with security updates, the importance of running application updates periodically, and you see the anti-malware client there. And then if you go further out a step to the network layer, you see the firewall, the intrusion prevention system, the IDS, and the SIEM. And so really, conceptually speaking, if you have these 8 layers of defense here, you're going to have a lot more defense on your network so that if one of these layers fails, or 2 or 3 or 4 fail, you still have the other layers to protect you. Finally, I want to make sure I emphasize the importance of having data backups. And it's important to keep backups, not just for malware or ransomware. It's important to keep them for hardware failure or other operational type failures. It's important to keep these just in case something happens to the first copy of your data. And it's important with ransomware to keep these backups offline, detached from your network, protected from your network. That way, if your network becomes infected, your backups don't get infected. There have been many companies that have gotten hit with ransomware that have been able to recover, not by paying the ransom, but by wiping their networks and then building back from the backups. And while it's time consuming, it certainly beats going out of business or losing your data. Finally, the last piece I want to mention is it's important for you to test your backups regularly, and that means restoring pieces of data from your backup. So let's say your company has, you're in insurance. It's important to make sure that you've got your insurance applications backed up. So go and restore one of those periodically to make sure that backup works. Go and restore your email periodically, and restore a mailbox. Make sure you can do that. The last thing you want is to spend money on backups and then realize, hey, you can't restore from these backups in the time of need. I hope this video is helpful. If it is, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.